welfare budget currently accounts for 24.5% of public spending, according to the Treasury. That's around the same amount that's spent on education, defence, housing policy and industry, all wedged together. So if the Chancellor is going to meet his goal for eliminating that deficit within 5 years, that is assuming he's still in government and the Conservatives are still in government come the next election, what would our welfare state look like? Well, Phil Agulnik is the director of the online benefits calculator entitled2.com, and we're also joined by James Bartholomew, who's the author of The Welfare State We're In. Gentlemen, welcome to Five Live. Phil, in terms of those welfare changes we heard about yesterday, what were the key items that stood out for you?
Okay, there wasn't anything really big and new yesterday. I mean, one of the things which might affect some people of your listeners is self-employed people getting tax credits with low earnings are going to have a special test applied to them, which will make it harder for them to get tax credits. But in general, there was a surprisingly small amount of announcements.
The whole tax credits issue, Phil, has been a big one, hasn't it? People seem to be penalised. Labour would say that are working hard but getting tax credits. And has that changed?
No, the basic structure of tax credits has remained the same. What they're doing is they're just trying to par down the amount they're spending through making the increases lower than the rate of inflation. Just a little bit lower, actually. Just 1%. Inflation's about 1.2%.
How much are they going to save from that? Any ideas? I mean, is it going to be a big saving?
No, that's going to be measured in the hundreds of millions, that kind of saving.
James, the title of your book sort of gives away what I would think you think yourself of the welfare state. What did you make of the changes?
Well, I agree with the other speaker. The ones that are announced at the moment are not big. But I noticed very much that clip you played from George Osborne, in which he talks about freezing working age benefits, a possible future thing. And that, if it actually happened, would be a major event. I mean, he's done some of that already. I think it's capped at 1%. I may be wrong there, but I think it's something like that, some cap, which means that it has been going down in real terms compared to earnings. At least it should be. And if he continues like that, essentially bringing down the value of benefits in real terms, while not bringing them down in nominal terms, then it obviously, A, saves money, and B, increases the incentives for people to seek work.
He's looked after old people a lot, hasn't he, in previous budgets, and indeed in this one as well, and he's fairly kind about pensions, etc. James, do you think that he's going to have to revise things like free bus passes for everybody and all of that kind of stuff that he's been handing out to pensioners?
Well, I think on pensions, the Conservative policy on this, the coalition policy, I suppose, is unrealistic in the long term. It doesn't make sense to increase a sum by the highest of three different possibilities forever. You cannot do that forever, otherwise eventually it would become bigger than the whole of GDP. You can't have something growing faster than the rest of the economy indefinitely, otherwise it is the whole economy. So that cannot last long term. It is a politically motivated thing. I mean, it is true that some of the people on pensions are, as Osborne says, unable to react to different circumstances, and a lot of them are poor too, because of our pension system has been a disaster, really.
Yeah.
But it can't last forever. That system.
It might be worth adding in what percentage of benefits go to different types of people.
Yeah.
5% of total government spending goes on benefits of families with children. 6% are the unemployed and others on low incomes. 14% older people. And 5% sick and disabled people. So I guess if the accusation was that it was unrealistic to protect older people, you might find evidence in those numbers I've just said, because they are the biggest chunk of, in terms of the categories of people.
They're also the biggest voters.
They're also the biggest voters. So the more you cut the rest, the more you're still left with the biggest pie, I guess, left to cut. You might say it's an opportunity.
Phil, what do you think about the new test for the self-employed? What will this mean in practice, do you think?
So it's going to affect people who are earning less than £156 a week who are self-employed. And what it's going to mean is you're going to have to prove to HMRC that you're kind of in gainful employment. So the details of the test aren't set out. But basically, if you're earning less than that amount, they're going to say, well, you say that you're working over 30 hours. Show us that you're gainfully employed. So it's trying to tackle people who say they're working over 30 hours, but their income is, say, £100 a week or something.
Again, I mean, do you think that's likely to save the government much money in the long term?
No, it's not a big money saver. It's part of something government are doing also in universal credit through something called the minimum income floor. They're concerned that one of the issues about the tax credit system is that some people have become self-employed and they can't really support themselves on their self-employed income, and they're using tax credits to kind of boost a lifestyle choice.
Well, James, let's just end by talking about the direction of travel, really. I mean, you heard Paul Johnson there saying we're only halfway there. Things are going to be just as bad, if not worse, over the next 5 years in terms of spending cuts.
Yes, well, that appears to be true. It's worth pointing out, I mean, when we're considering the misery of all this and how difficult the situation really is, and I think political parties in general are not facing up to how difficult it is. But it's worth remembering we have had one major success, despite the difficulties of the welfare reform. We have had the biggest drop in unemployment this country has ever known without there being a boom in the last 3 years, a drop of 750,000 people unemployed, and that is, without a boom, that is an extraordinary and unprecedented achievement.
Are they earning enough money, though? That's the question. Are they?
A lot of them are the people who were low paid. So the people coming in are low paid. But, I mean, it's ironic. That kind of objection you just raised is a sort of one that Labour people say. Labour used to be the party of full employment and now seems to say, oh, we don't care. We have to prefer them to be unemployed rather than low paid. And that's, I think, an appalling attitude and one I totally disagree with.
James, thank you. James Bartholomew, Phil Agulnik as well, who's from the website entitled2.com and on from 5 Live Money. Thank you.
Would you like a little Orion update?